Greetings exiles, and welcome back to another experiment. This time around, we're starting off in SSF, so let's get started. Originally, this character was supposed to be an Ascendant, going Archmage to start off with, and eventually rolling into Frostmage. I ended up playing Archmage Arc throughout the entire campaign, and things went pretty smoothly, and towards the end, I swapped over to Shock Nova of Procession. I'd heard very good things about it, it's a new skill, and it overall seemed pretty interesting. I made my way through the rest of the Atlas, managed to kill Ether and Exarch, and things were looking pretty good. However, I'd made a pretty big mess of the build at one point, and worst of all, most of my video files corrupted, around 80% or so. And while I could use Orb of Regrets to fix my build, I sadly could not use Orb of Regrets on my hard drive and save the files. So after weighing it over, the decision was pretty simple. It was time to go again. So for the second time this video, greetings exiles, and welcome to SSF. This time around, we're playing Wintertide Brand Occultist, one of my favorite league starters. Whenever there's a good league like this, with lots of mechanics and lots of ways to upgrade the builds and progress, I always feel tempted to go into SSF, and this league was no different. However, from my earlier Shock Nova playthrough, I did manage to find a few uniques that I wanted to keep, and I really didn't feel like doing the Atlas over again when I had just done it 3 days earlier. So consider this experiment 0 to hero with an asterisk. I'll be progressing through the campaign as if it was a new character, and I'll basically be locking myself out of my stash until I at least get myself up to similar gear levels like I had previously, just to keep things fair. So with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get to it. We start off by picking up Freezing Pulse. As an avid ice enjoyer, you will never catch me using fire spells unless absolutely mandatory. We kill Hillrake and pick up the Frostbomb gem, die to Brutus because I had no mana or portal scrolls left, take our revenge for an embarrassing early death, and quickly move on with the rest of Act 1. At level 12, we head back into town, pick up Wintertide Brand and Efficacy, and slot it together with Arcane Surge for a 3-link. And now that we're fully geared up, it's time to kill Merville. This is also why I love Wintertide Brand, as the skill itself is just so incredibly smooth and cozy throughout the acts. It kind of takes care of everything and you barely have to do anything. It also does good damage in the campaign, so overall just one of my favorite skills. And despite me having 2 white wands with literally no mods on them whatsoever, Merville goes down pretty quickly. And on to Act 2. Find a random alchemy orb and throw it on our wand for some cold dot multi. We kill Fidelitas, and pick up the Cold Snap gem as the quest reward. And finally pick up the Runebinder keystone for more damage. We help Lyra and kill the other bandits for some extra resistances. And then go to my favorite place in the entire game. As a severe arachnophobe, I consider her the final boss of Act 2, and also the reason why I will never play hardcore. And if you're wondering how I play with her on my screen, the answer is, I don't. I look at my second monitor with OBS extremely small and then squint through my eyes, just to be able to dodge some occasional hits. The Weaver dies and we can thankfully move on with the rest of the act. And for our efforts, we are rewarded with faster casting support, which we use to replace Arcane Surge. And despite still being infested with spiders, the rest of Act 2 goes pretty smooth and we make our way up to the boss. The real one this time. Wintertide Brand also makes this fight very easy, and with no real issues, we move on to Act 3. After helping Clarissa, we pick up the Frostbite Curse, and buy ourselves a Malevolence Aura gem. Wintertide Brand benefits heavily from increased duration, allowing you to stay at max stacks longer, so Malevolence helps with that a lot. On the way through the docks, we drop ourselves a 4-link with a good base. Sadly, I'd run out of chromes, and I'd have to wait with using it for a little while longer, so for now we're still stuck on the 3-link. However, with our curse and aura upgrades, our damage is looking very good regardless, and Dominus falls pretty quickly. Then finally hitting the 3 blue 1 green on our 4-link chest piece, I go back and pick up Hypothermia, and we now have a 4-link, which means it's time for lab. Thankfully, the lab itself goes pretty smoothly and his aura falls pretty quickly. From the Divine Font, we pick up the extra quality for Wintertide Brand, as the gem itself scales really well with quality. And the main reason we're here, of course, is to ascend to Occultist. We pick up Void Beacon for the reduced cold res on enemies, and move on with our day. And after picking ourselves up a random staff with tier 3 cold dot multi, and crafting on some cast speed, our weapon for the rest of the campaign was pretty much sorted. We easily kill Cowl, and Deresso, And with our damage feeling very cozy, I decide to spec into some more life nodes instead. The rest of Act 4 is also very smooth. We don't really have any close calls, and Malachi is basically a pushover. Act 5 goes in a similar fashion, very smoothly. And if things weren't already going well enough, we also happen to drop a very early 5-link. Slot in Bone Chill, Hypothermia, Efficacy, Spastic Casting, and of course Wintertide Brand. And we are now loaded up on damage. Then pathing over towards Sovereignty and picking up Grace from the library, our auras are pretty much good to go. If you want more damage, I would replace Bone Chill with Ellie Focus, but especially during the campaign, I appreciate having the extra chill. We quickly make our way through the rest of the act, kill Kitava, and move on. At this point in time, we have most of our gear set up, and all we're doing is picking up rares for life and resist upgrades, and just focusing on getting through the acts. Act 6 goes very smoothly. We pick ourselves up a random suppressed tattoo off of the island, and then we move on all the way through Act 6, my second favorite act, Act 7, and 8, and finally get to the second lab. Here we pick up Frigid Wake, and add some more quality to our Wintertide brand. And then barely done with our second lab, not even 2 minutes later, we hit a Divine Orb. This character's run has been absolutely blessed so far. With our current gear, we are just very tanky, we do a lot of damage and everything is going very smoothly, and Act 9 proves to be no problem either. Towards the end of Act 10, we make sure to pick up our third lab, right before Kitava lowers our resistances. We kill Izaro, no problem, add some more quality to our Wintertide brand gem, and then pick up our third ascendancy, Val Bastion. With all of our ascendancies sorted out, it was time to fight Kitava. The big bad of Act 10, however, proves no match for us, and we quickly take him down. Now I am by no means a speedrunner, or anywhere close to some of the other content creators that play this game, but killing Kitava in 4.5 hours with only a single death to Brutus is a pretty good league start to me. Then, wasting no time at all, it was finally time to start mapping. As I mentioned before, this is an SSF 0 to Hero with an asterisk, as I'd already completed a bunch of the Atlas before, and I'd also already obtained 2 of the Void Stones, those being the Exarch and Ether Void Stones, and the Incarnation Void Stones. To keep things fair, I imposed some rules upon myself. I would not be allowed to use any equipment that I had gathered on my other attempt, I wasn't allowed to use excessive amounts of currency that I had stocked up, and I would have to complete the next Void Stone on a 5-link. So while not entirely a fresh start, it would be as close as I could reasonably get to it. So after making my way through some of the lower tier maps and obtaining a little bit of currency, it was time to swap some gems around and actually get a gem setup going. We slot in a 4-link Cold Snap with Bone Chill, Unbound Ailments and increased area of effect, a 4-link Cast on Damage Taken Ice Nova setup with increased AoE and Ellie Prolift to spread the freezers around when we get hit, and for our auras we were already running Grace and Malevolence, and we are now also adding in Blasphemy and Feeble. Blasphemy and Feeble works really nicely because it causes enemies to deal less damage and have less accuracy, which works nicely with an evasion build. Then after that, it was back to leveling again. I was using my starter Atlas, which contains Jun and Breach, as I think it's just a very cozy way to get some early gear going. You get a lot of equipment that you can unveil from Jun, and the tree provides any and all gear that you could possibly need. And at this point, for the next few hours, this is all that I was doing. Map, do Breach, go to the tree, find new gear, anything that have life, energy shield resistances, and then go back to mapping, do more breaches, do more gear, as I made my way up through the map tiers. Eventually slotted in a Val Discipline for some extra sustain, found ourselves another Divine Orb. Always nice. And then after a few hours of making random rare gear upgrades and mapping, it was time for Uberlab. I wish there was more to show you up to this point, maybe some interesting uniques that I'd found or other interesting gear upgrades to make, but nope, this is SSF and I had literally nothing but rare gear equipped. Just ignore this one please, okay? I always forget to upgrade my flasks, I'm sorry. Thankfully, Wintertide Brand makes any kind of bossing or unique monster very easy because you place the brands and run around while they do damage. Eventually Izaro falls. We do not get lucky with a Transfigured Skill Gem, so we'll have to come back later, and we pick up our last Ascendancy. We pick up Unholy Authority, as it allows our hexes to affect hexproof enemies, and we also get an additional curse. Eventually, we find ourselves a random staff upgrade with potential for more. Exalt Slam it in hopes of hitting something good, which we do. Hit it with an Annul Orb, and luckily annul off the suffix we wanted to get rid of, craft cast speed, and we have ourselves a new staff upgrade. It's not much of a craft, but sometimes you just get lucky. And then we finally find our first useful unique item for the build. A Duator's Damning. With this unique ring equipped, we can apply an additional curse. Combined with the +1 curse we get from the Occultist Ascendancy, and the Whispers of Doom notable on the passive tree, we would be able to apply 4 curses in total. However, sadly, we're still missing a few passive points and some attributes and resistances, so for now we'll put this in the stash and use it later. We keep going up the map tiers until we eventually hit level 90, still only with a single death to Brutus. It turns out that playing safe and not speccing into CI well before you possibly have the gear for it actually helps you stay alive. Who would have known? Eventually, the tree blesses us with an incredible Twilight Regalia, and after quality, it ends up at an amazing 1.1k energy shield. And after farming for a couple more hours and well over 400 fusings, I finally hit a 5 link on the chest piece, and it was time to swap to CI. I had gathered some gear from the tree and from mapping, but none of it was really spectacular. However, it's up on the screen now if you're interested, or you can check the description below for the POB. You'll find both the live version and the post-CI swap there. Then it was time for a quick respec. And after realizing that I had missed some passive points in the campaign, a classic as always, the final respec was complete, and this is what the finished passive tree looked like. It was definitely a lot more focused on being tanky rather than damage output, and if you wanted to, you could easily ditch some of the block nodes on the left and spec into more cold damage over time. We slapped on a bunch of Eldritch Influence orbs on our remaining gear pieces. Although sadly we didn't have too many orbs left, so we'd have to come back to this later. We rolled what we could, and then it was time to get back to mapping. It was then that I realized that I'd forgotten the Duator's Damning we picked up earlier, which meant it was time to set up our curses. We already had Enfeeble in our Blasphemy setup, and then for the remaining 3 I would run Bane with Frostbite, Elemental Weakness, and Punishment, trying to squeeze out as much damage as we can. And after figuring out some more resistances and attributes and swapping out another ring, we ended up, finally, with the real version of the build. And with everything ready, it was finally time to complete our goal and obtain the next Voidstone. It's time to lock in. Oh, why is it you first? No. Bah. And with both the Shaper and the Elder dead, our goal for the first video is done. Wintertide Brand is definitely not the fastest boss killer out there, but it's at least a very safe way to kill. Having already obtained the other 2 Void Stones during the reroll incident, we now only have 1 more left. However, that will end up being in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, peace!